That moment when your toddler throws themselves on the floor of the grocery store, or your teen rolls their eyes so hard they might actually see their own brain. These are not just annoying behaviors, they're activating something much deeper within you. What if these triggering moments are actually windows into your own emotional landscape? But here's what most people completely miss. The problem is not your child's behavior at all. The real issue, and the real opportunity, lies in understanding why specific behaviors trigger you at specific developmental stages. And let's be real, some advice makes this look so easy, don't they? Meanwhile, in actual homes across the country, most parents try that just stay calm advice during meltdowns and end up doom-scrolling through social media at 2 a.m., wondering where they went wrong. Turns out, there's a slightly more effective approach than midnight phone therapy. A 3-year-old's tantrum and a 13-year-old's defiance activate entirely different neural pathways in the parental brain, and each requires a completely different regulation approach. Research at the intersection of developmental psychology and parental triggering reveals what Jung might call the shadow side of parenting. Those moments when normal developmental behaviors activate our deepest emotional wounds. As Dr. Daniel Siegel, neuropsychiatrist and author, powerfully states, the most important predictor of a child's well-being is a parent's self-understanding. Or consider philosopher Alain de Botton's insight. The good enough parent is the parent who can tolerate the idea that they are, in fact, not that good a parent. And perhaps most relevant, Dr. Gabor Mate reminds us, your children's behavior is rarely about you, but your triggers always are. In the following, you'll discover why toddler tantrums activate powerlessness triggers in parents, how elementary schoolers' defiance connects to childhood wounds, the surprising reason teen eye-rolling feels like a personal attack, and most importantly, the exact regulation techniques that work for each age. This is not about becoming a perfect, always calm parent. It's about transforming triggered moments into opportunities for deeper connection. So let's begin with the most fundamental question. What happens in the brain when a child pushes a parent's buttons? When your child exhibits a challenging behavior, your brain does not simply register it as a neutral event. Instead, it activates what neuroscientists call emotional memory networks, patterns of neural firing that connect present experiences with past emotional wounds. But here's what makes parenting uniquely challenging. These triggers evolve as your child develops. This brings us to what psychologists call the developmental mismatch theory, the idea that children's normal developmental needs often fundamentally conflict with parents' expectations and emotional capacity. Consider this paradox. Your toddler's biological drive for autonomy manifests as defiance precisely when you're most exhausted. Your teen's necessary identity formation appears as rejection exactly when you're seeking connection. These are not coincidences. They're developmental inevitabilities. What if I told you that your most intense parenting triggers are not random? What if they're actually revealing the exact emotional wounds you need to heal? Before we explore the 5 developmental stages and their specific triggers, I want to introduce a framework that will transform how you respond in these moments. The STOP method, sense, track, observe, proceed, provides the foundation for all age-specific regulation techniques we'll cover today. This method works differently at each developmental stage, but the core principle remains: creating space between trigger and response. Now, let's examine how this applies to each developmental stage, beginning with perhaps the most physically demanding, the toddler years. The toddler years, roughly ages 1 to 3, present a perfect storm of triggering behaviors. Let's identify the most common. First, emotional meltdowns and tantrums that seem to materialize from nowhere. Second, the infamous no phase where defiance becomes the default response. And third, physical aggression like hitting, biting, or throwing objects. These behaviors activate 3 primary trigger types in parents: powerlessness triggers, when your child's behavior makes you feel helpless, often echoing experiences from your own childhood when you felt powerless; Public judgment triggers, when your child's behavior in public activates deep-seated shame responses. And emotional contagion, when your child's intense emotions literally hijack your nervous system through mirror neuron activation. Neuroscience reveals something fascinating here. Your brain literally mirrors your child's emotional state. Their distress becomes your distress through an automatic neurological process. But what if you could interrupt this pattern? For toddlers specifically, the most effective regulation technique is what child development specialists call the emotional container method. This four-step approach works because it addresses the unique neurological reality of the toddler-parent relationship. Step 1. Physical grounding. Place both feet firmly on the floor, shoulder-width apart. Take 3 deep breaths, extending the exhale longer than the inhale. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, your body's built-in calming mechanism. Step 2. Internal boundary visualization. Imagine an invisible force field between you and your child's emotions. This is not about emotional disconnection, it's about emotional distinction. Their feelings do not have to become your feelings. Step 3. Validation without escalation. Use this exact script. I see you're having big feelings. It's okay to feel upset. I'm here with you. Notice this does not attempt to fix or change their emotions. It simply acknowledges them. Step 4. Co-regulation through presence, not persuasion. Your calm physical presence does more to regulate your toddler than any words could. Kneel at their level, maintain a calm facial expression, and simply be with them in their distress. Remember this key phrase: their big feelings are not an emergency. When you respond to a toddler's tantrum as though it's an emergency, you communicate that emotions are dangerous and overwhelming. When you remain regulated, you teach that emotions are temporary and manageable. What makes this approach particularly effective during the toddler years is its alignment with their developmental reality. Toddlers lack the neurological hardware for emotional self-regulation. Their prefrontal cortex, the brain's regulation center, is profoundly underdeveloped. By becoming their external regulation system, you're not just managing a tantrum, you're building neural pathways that will serve them for a lifetime. But what happens when your child enters the magical thinking years of early childhood? The triggers and solutions shift dramatically. The preschool years, roughly ages 3 to 5, bring a fascinating new set of parental triggers as children develop more sophisticated cognitive and social abilities. The most common triggering behaviors during this stage include, first, lying and magical thinking that can feel like deliberate deception. Second, early attempts at emotional manipulation. If you loved me, you would. And third, resistance to routines and transitions that can make daily life feel like an endless negotiation. These behaviors activate entirely different trigger types than the toddler years. Truth-trust triggers, when your child's relationship with reality feels tenuous, often connecting to your own experiences with betrayal or dishonesty. Control triggers, when your child's unpredictability activates your need for order, frequently stemming from childhood experiences where unpredictability meant danger. And time pressure triggers, when your child's natural timelessness collides with the relentless demands of modern schedules. As philosopher Martin Buber observed, play is the exaltation of the possible. Yet for many parents, that possibility feels threatening rather than exalting. For preschoolers specifically, the most effective regulation technique is the curiosity bridge approach, a method that leverages their developmental fascination with possibility while maintaining necessary boundaries. Step 1. Wonder-based questions that invite cooperation. Rather than demanding, "Put your shoes on now," try, "I wonder how fast you can put your shoes on while I count to 20. This transforms opposition into engagement. Step 2. Playful redirection that maintains boundaries. When your preschooler refuses to leave the playground, instead of escalating demands, try, "Should we hop like bunnies or stomp like dinosaurs to the car?" This maintains the non-negotiable boundary, leaving, while offering autonomy in how it happens. Step 3. Logical consequences that teach rather than punish. If your child refuses to put toys away, the logical consequence is those toys become temporarily unavailable, not as punishment, but as a natural outcome of their choice. This distinction is crucial for preschoolers' developing sense of cause and effect. When implementing this approach, your tone and framing transform the entire interaction. Consider the difference. Punitive approach. You didn't clean up when I told you to, so I'm taking away your toys because you're being bad. Logical consequence approach. When toys are left out, they show me they need a rest. These toys will be available again tomorrow when you're ready to take care of them. The first approach teaches fear and compliance. The second teaches responsibility and natural outcomes. As Dr. Jane Nelson, founder of Positive Discipline, explains, punishment may stop behavior temporarily, but it does not teach children what to do instead or give them the skills for self-regulation. This distinction becomes particularly powerful with preschoolers because their developing brains are actively building cause-effect understanding. When you implement logical consequences, you're literally helping wire neural pathways that connect choices with outcomes, a foundation for lifelong decision-making. The key elements that transform this from punishment to teaching include maintaining a calm tone, connecting the consequence directly to the behavior, focusing on the action rather than character, offering a clear path to restoration, and preserving your child's dignity throughout the process. Step 4. Reconnection ritual that repairs the relationship. After any difficult interaction, create a brief physical reconnection, a special handshake, a 20-second hug, or a silly face contest. This teaches that conflict does not damage connection. Remember this key phrase: connection before correction. When you attempt to correct behavior without first establishing connection, resistance intensifies. When you connect first, cooperation becomes possible. Consider a typical morning routine battle. Your preschooler refuses to get dressed, time is running short, and you feel pressure mounting. The triggered response is to escalate demands and threats. The regulated response using the curiosity bridge approach might sound like, I wonder if your stuffed bear wants to help you pick out clothes today. Should bear choose your shirt or your pants? This maintains the boundary, getting dressed, while bridging to their world of imagination. What makes this approach particularly effective during the preschool years is its alignment with their developmental reality. Preschoolers are developing theory of mind, the understanding that others have different thoughts and perspectives. By engaging their curiosity rather than demanding compliance, you strengthen these emerging neural pathways. But as children enter the elementary years, their social awareness creates an entirely new landscape of triggers and opportunities. The elementary years, roughly ages 6 to 10, introduce triggers that often catch parents by surprise as children develop greater social awareness and academic identities. The most common triggering behaviors during this stage include, first, academic resistance and homework battles that can feel like direct challenges to parental authority. Second, social comparison and sibling rivalry that activate our own childhood social wounds. And third, the beginning of backtalk and attitude that can feel like personal disrespect. These behaviors activate trigger types that often connect directly to parents' own school experiences. Achievement triggers. When your child's academic performance becomes entangled with your sense of adequacy as a parent, often connecting to your own experiences with academic pressure or expectations. Fairness triggers. When your child's complaints about unfairness or comparisons to siblings activate your own experiences with favoritism or inequality. And respect triggers. When your child's emerging independence manifests as questioning authority, often connecting to your own relationship with authority figures. Psychologist Haim Janot observed, children are like wet cement. Whatever falls on them makes an impression. During these formative years, your regulated response to their challenging behaviors shapes their internal dialogue about themselves. For elementary-age children specifically, the most effective regulation technique is the consultant approach, a method that honors their growing cognitive abilities while providing the emotional scaffolding they still need. Step 1. Emotional validation before problem solving. When your child complains about homework being stupid or too hard, start with, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated with this assignment." That makes sense. Challenging work can feel overwhelming sometimes. Step 2. Reflective listening that identifies underlying needs. "I'm wondering if you're concerned about not being able to do it perfectly." Or, "Are you worried this might take too long and you'll miss playtime?" This helps children develop emotional literacy while feeling understood. Step 3. Collaborative problem-solving framework. Let's think about this together. What part feels most challenging? What might make it easier? What's worked before when you felt stuck? This positions you as a consultant rather than an adversary. Step 4. Natural consequence implementation. If you choose not to complete the assignment, you'll need to explain that to your teacher tomorrow and possibly finish it during recess. I'm here to help if you decide you want support. This transfers responsibility appropriately while maintaining support. Remember this key phrase: emotions first, solutions second. When you rush to solutions before acknowledging emotions, resistance intensifies. When you validate emotions first, collaborative problem-solving becomes possible. Consider a typical homework battle. Your child proclaims math is stupid and they're never going to use it anyway. The triggered response is to lecture about the importance of education and force compliance. The regulated response using the consultant approach might sound like, "It seems like you're feeling frustrated with this math work. Many people feel that way sometimes. I'm curious which problems feel most confusing." This validates their experience while gently moving toward solutions. What makes this approach particularly effective during the elementary years is its alignment with their developmental reality. Elementary-aged children are developing metacognition, the ability to think about their thinking. By consulting rather than commanding, you strengthen these emerging executive function skills. But as children approach adolescence, the landscape shifts dramatically again, creating perhaps the most challenging triggers of all. The tween years, roughly ages 10 to 13, represent a developmental bridge between childhood and adolescence that creates unique triggering dynamics for parents. The most common triggering behaviors during this stage include: first, digital and social media issues that can feel like they're being pulled into a world beyond your influence. Second, increased privacy and secrecy that can activate deep parental fears. And third, peer influence and identity exploration that may conflict with family values. These behaviors activate trigger types that often connect to our deepest parental fears. Safety triggers, when your child's normal exploration activates fear-based responses about potential dangers, often magnified by media and cultural messaging. Trust triggers, when your child's natural move toward privacy feels like secretiveness or deception. And loss triggers, when your child's natural separation process activates grief or abandonment wounds as you witness their childhood gradually ending. As developmental psychologist Erik Erikson observed, the strength acquired at the preceding stage is tested by the necessity to let go of the familiar physical world of childhood and to transfer one's trust to representatives of the future. During the tween years, this transfer of trust becomes particularly challenging as children begin actively separating from parental identity. For tweens specifically, the most effective regulation technique is the boundary bridge method, an approach that maintains necessary protection while honoring their growing need for autonomy. Step 1. Self-regulation through trigger identification. When your tween's behavior activates intense emotion, pause and ask yourself, is this about safety, trust, or loss? Is my reaction proportional to the actual situation? This internal awareness creates crucial space between trigger and response. Step 2. Separating safety concerns from control issues. Safety concerns require boundaries. Control issues require release. Ask yourself, is this about protecting my child or controlling my child? This distinction transforms your approach to limit setting. Step 3. Creating negotiable versus non-negotiable boundaries. Non-negotiable boundaries involve safety, health, and core values. Everything else becomes potentially negotiable. For example, using respectful language is non-negotiable. Your clothing choices within these basic parameters are negotiable. Step 4. Maintaining connection while upholding boundaries. I care about you too much to let this continue, and I'm here to help you navigate this challenge. The word "and" replaces "but," maintaining both boundary and connection simultaneously. Remember this key phrase: connection is protection. When you maintain genuine connection with your tween, you gain more protective influence than any rule could provide. Your relationship becomes the safety net during these years of increasing independence. Consider a typical social media conflict. Your tween is spending hours on platforms you find concerning, and you discover content that alarms you. The triggered response is to remove all devices and impose rigid restrictions. The regulated response using the boundary bridge method might sound like, "I've noticed screen time seems to be affecting your sleep and mood. I'm concerned because adequate rest is essential for your developing brain. Let's create some boundaries around technology that work for both of us. What ideas do you have?" What makes this approach particularly effective during the tween years is its alignment with their developmental reality. Tweens are experiencing the early stages of the adolescent brain remodeling, a biological process driving them toward independence, while their decision-making centers remain underdeveloped. By bridging boundaries rather than imposing them unilaterally, you support this complex developmental transition. But the most intense parental triggers often emerge during the teenage years, when the stakes feel highest and parental influence seems to wane. The teenage years, roughly ages 14 to 18, often represent the most triggering phase of parenting, as adolescents complete the necessary developmental task of identity formation. The most common triggering behaviors during this stage include: first, identity exploration and rejection of family values that can feel like personal betrayal. Second, risk-taking behaviors that activate our deepest fears for their safety. And third, complete withdrawal or hostile defiance that can make connection seem impossible. These behaviors activate our most profound parental triggers, identity triggers. When teens reject aspects of your identity or values, often activating existential questions about your life choices and legacy. Authority triggers, as power dynamics naturally and necessarily shift, often connecting to your own adolescent experiences with authority. And abandonment triggers, as teens naturally separate, activating primal fears about losing connection permanently. Carl Jung observed, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." Nowhere is this more evident than during adolescence, when teens must psychologically separate to form their own identities. For teens specifically, the most effective regulation technique is the relationship bank account system, a method that maintains influence through connection rather than control. Step 1. Emotional regulation through perspective taking. When triggered by your teen's behavior, mentally place yourself in their developmental position. Their brain is literally being remodeled, creating a biological imperative toward identity formation and separation. Step 2. Strategic vulnerability that builds trust. Share appropriate stories from your own adolescence, including mistakes and struggles. This normalizes their experience while creating connection. "When I was your age, I also questioned everything my parents believed." That's actually a healthy part of figuring out who you are. Step 3. The pause and circle back method for heated moments. When emotions escalate, simply state, "This conversation matters too much to have it when we're both upset. Let's take 30 minutes to cool down and then try again." This models emotional regulation while preserving dignity. Step 4. Maintaining influence through connection, not control. Make regular deposits in the relationship bank account through one-on-one time, genuine interest in their world, and respect for their growing autonomy. These deposits create the relational capital needed when you must make a withdrawal through limit setting. Remember this key phrase: seek to understand before being understood. When you approach teen conflicts with curiosity rather than judgment, you maintain the connection that gives you continued influence in their lives. Consider a typical values conflict. Your teen declares they no longer share your religious or political beliefs. The triggered response is to lecture, argue, or demand compliance with family traditions. The regulated response using the relationship bank account system might sound like, "I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with me, even knowing we might see things differently. I'd love to understand more about how you've come to these conclusions. Would you be open to having conversations where we both share our perspectives without trying to change each other's minds?" What makes this approach particularly effective during the teen years is its alignment with their developmental reality. Adolescent brain development creates a biological imperative toward identity formation, risk assessment through experience, and social recalibration. By maintaining connection without demanding conformity, you support this essential developmental process. Now, let's explore how these age-specific approaches integrate into a comprehensive developmental regulation roadmap. The 5 age-specific regulation techniques we've explored are not isolated approaches. They form a developmental spiral where each builds upon the previous stage. The emotional container method for toddlers creates the foundation of emotional safety. The curiosity bridge approach for preschoolers builds pathways between your world and theirs. The consultant approach for elementary children develops collaborative problem-solving skills. The boundary bridge method for tweens balances protection with growing autonomy, and the relationship bank account system for teens maintains connection through the separation process. To integrate these approaches into your daily parenting, implement what psychologists call the 3-3-3 practice, 3 minutes of preparation before potentially triggering interactions. This might involve reviewing which developmental stage your child is in and which regulation technique applies. 3 breaths during triggering moments. This creates the essential space between trigger and response where choice becomes possible. 3 reflections after difficult exchanges. Ask yourself, what was triggered in me? How did I respond? What might I try next time? What does success actually look like when implementing these approaches? Not perfect regulation, but faster recovery. Not absence of triggers, but increased awareness of trigger patterns. Not flawless interactions, but growing capacity for repair after rupture. Remember that triggers evolve as children develop. What triggers you during the toddler years may resolve, while new triggers emerge during adolescence. This is not failure. It's the natural unfolding of the parent-child relationship. As your child develops, you're invited to develop alongside them. Their triggers become invitations to heal aspects of yourself that might otherwise remain unaddressed. As psychologist Carl Rogers observed, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." This applies profoundly to parenting. When you accept your triggers without judgment, you gain the power to respond differently. We've explored 5 powerful age-specific solutions for parental triggering. For toddlers, the emotional container method creates safety amid emotional storms. For preschoolers, the curiosity bridge approach transforms opposition into cooperation. For elementary children, the consultant approach builds problem-solving partnerships. For tweens, the boundary bridge method balances protection with autonomy. And for teens, the relationship bank account system maintains influence through connection. Imagine transforming your most triggering parenting moments from sources of shame and disconnection into opportunities for growth and deeper relationship. Imagine your child learning not that emotions are dangerous and must be suppressed, but that emotions are information that can be understood and integrated. Imagine breaking intergenerational patterns of reactivity, creating a new legacy of emotional intelligence for generations to come. Your personal healing journey creates ripples far beyond your own family. When you transform your triggered responses, you're not just changing your relationship with your child, you're disrupting intergenerational patterns that may have persisted for centuries. Each regulated moment becomes a thread in a new tapestry of collective healing. Imagine the profound impact as thousands of parents simultaneously practice these age-specific regulation techniques. Together, we're creating a watershed moment in conscious parenting, a quiet revolution of emotional intelligence that spreads from family to family, community to community. Will you join this movement of conscious regulation? Your participation matters not just to your family, but to our collective journey toward a more emotionally intelligent world. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Share your biggest regulation win or the triggering behavior you find most challenging. This community of growth-minded parents is here to support your journey. In our next video, we'll explore the repair protocol, how to heal after parenting moments you regret. Because even with these powerful regulation techniques, we all have moments where our triggers get the best of us. The question is not if ruptures will happen, but how we repair them when they do. Remember, the goal is not perfect regulation, it's authentic connection. Your triggers are not obstacles to good parenting, they're invitations to deeper understanding of yourself and your child. Until next time, may you meet your triggers with compassion and your child with presence.